Welcome to Bible Prophecy Now with Rabbi Joe Bell. In this program, Rabbi Bell presents a clearer understanding of prophecies, past, present, and future. In this time of utter confusion and dread, tune in to Bible Prophecy Now with Rabbi Joe Bell for greater insights of the truth of God's Word and God's prophetic timing. Now join us and let's learn together. And now, Rabbi Joe Bell.
Hello friends, I'm Rabbi Joe. Welcome to Bible Prophecy Now. It's so good to be with you again and here on Living Faith Television. Today we're going to talk about the beast. We're going to talk about how the beast is moving in the earth. And I'm going to also explain to you again, review a little bit about how traditional interpretation of the beast and traditional interpretation of prophecy versus modern interpretation of prophecy. And I'm going to explain to you why I believe with traditional interpretation of prophecy, you can't understand what's happening in modern times. But if you understand modern interpretation of prophecy, the Bible starts to come together like a puzzle. The pieces start to fit together. So let's begin. About a week ago, the premier of China, Xi Jinping, hosted Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, the totalitarian leader of the Hermit Kingdom of North Korea, a man who has rarely visited any other countries in his tenure as dictator and tyrant of North Korea. And this gathering of mostly dictators or so-called Democrats, like Prime Minister Modi of India, who persecutes Christians. So I wouldn't exactly call him a Democrat, but he does a great job persecuting Christians over there in India. So, but anyhow, there were many world leaders there visiting with Xi Jinping, who I have said in previous shows, and by modern interpretation, because China, their symbol is the dragon, and that the dragon represents Satan according to Revelation 12:9, and therefore on the earth today, if Satan is a spirit, and spirits like to inhabit bodies, we're told according to the Bible, then I believe the leader of China is representative of Satan in the earth today. And I'm going to show you why. So let's go on. So what does this meeting have to do with the beast? What does this meeting in China have to do with the beast? Well, let's go back in time to November of 2021. And in November 2021, the United Nations was given a gift from Oaxaca, Mexico. I hope I said that right. Oaxaca, Mexico, Brother Mike. And Oaxaca, Mexico gave a colorful statue that I'm going to ask my friend Aaron if he would put that picture of the colorful statue up so you can see it. And that statue has the face of a lion, has the body of a leopard, has the feet of a bear, it has the wings of an eagle, and they called it the Guardian of International Peace and Security. That's what the UN named this statue, which looks like I've said in the past, it would bite your head off. I know a man who likes knives, and you'd want to have a knife if you were near this beast, I'll tell you that much. But anyway, so they took it down. They took the statue down about a month later in December of 2021. They took that statue down because Christians were complaining in such numbers about that statue that the UN, the United Nations, took it down. Now, let's look at that statue. Let's look at the four main animals or beasts that make up that statue. We've got the bear, we've got the leopard, we've got the lion's face, and then we have the wings of the eagle, okay? We've got the wings of the eagle. So if we read in Daniel 7, verse 1, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. The great sea represents, according to Revelation 17, the Gentiles, or the nations, okay? So anytime you see the ocean in prophecy, or the great sea, it's referring to the nations, or the Gentiles, okay? So the beast came out of the sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. There was first like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was up from the earth, lifted up from the earth, and made to stand on the 2 feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise and devour much flesh. Arise and devour much flesh. Now after this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. And the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And I believe Aaron has a second picture of a beast with the 4 heads and the 4 wings. And he's a real handsome creature, let me tell you. Okay, so if you think, it makes me think of like one of those Frankenstein movies where they take body parts from different people and they stitch them together, Brother Mike, and they stitch these body parts together and they create the monster, And that's kind of what God did here. He took the parts of different creatures. And the fact is, the reality, folks, is that the beast isn't an animal at all. Each one of these beasts, each one of these different creatures, the bear, the leopard, the lion, the eagle wings, and so forth, they represent nations, okay? The dragon, they represent nations. And so it's fitting that they would bring a statue of these nations to the United Nations. Amen? Now, in Revelation 13, we see the same animals or beasts come out of the sea again. John the Revelator, he sees the same creatures, except this time, as I said, they're stitched together. Instead of being separate, like Daniel saw them in Daniel 7, in Revelation 13, John sees them as one body, kind of all, one unified body, or one confederate body, not like the Confederacy of the United States of the Civil War, but a confederacy of nations, or a united nation. So those who follow me and have watched the show know that the United Nations is the beast. I'm saying that the United Nations is the beast. It's not the guardian for international peace and security, okay? And it makes sense if you look at it that way. But how do we arrive at that? Now let's look at, there's 2 ways of interpreting, two main ways of interpreting prophecy. There's traditional interpretation of prophecy, and there's modern interpretation. Now remember, this all has to do with Xi Jinping's meeting. Now, why am I mentioning Xi Jinping? Let me go back to that for a second. Well, after the beast statue was placed at the United Nations in November 2021, and then it was removed in December 2021, then came January 2022, and in January was the Olympics, Winter Olympics in China, and Vladimir Putin made a special trip to China, to the dragon, to get the blessing and the authority. And it says in Revelation 13, the dragon gives authority to the beast. And so Russia's symbol, their animal symbol, is the brown bear. And the feet of the beast are the brown bear. Okay? So now, so Putin didn't go to see figure skating. All right? Do you believe that? he went to meet with Xi Jinping, and what he basically asked him for was his support in going to war with Ukraine, which happened. And Xi Jinping said to him, yeah, you can go to war with Ukraine. I give you my blessing, but wait till my Olympics are over. And so Putin waited till the Olympics were over, and he didn't attack Ukraine until February. 1 month later, he waited a few weeks, and in February of 2022, that's when the Ukraine war began. Okay? So, all right. So that's why I'm bringing up this recent meeting with Xi Jinping, and even President Trump said this meeting is a conspiracy against the United States, to do harm, he said, to the United States. This is a gathering of enemies of the United States, North Korea, China, Russia, with the purpose of doing harm. What harm? We don't know. We don't know what the plan is. But I'll tell you this, don't be surprised if something happens in the not too distant future. You know, China is determined to replace the United States as the single greatest world power of our generation. They are determined to replace the United States. They're determined to replace the dollar with the yuan, which is their currency. They're determined to replace the dollar status as the reserve currency of the world, so that's what that is. But let's look at traditional interpretation of these beasts and what the ancients and what not even just the ancients, many preachers today and prophecy teachers are teaching traditional interpretation of prophecy. So let's look at what they're saying, okay? Let's see what they're saying, all right? So there's two primary methods of interpreting prophecy. There's the traditional method and there's the modern method of interpretation. These are the main two ways of interpreting. Now, those who know me know that I subscribe to modern interpretation of prophecy. So let's look at the beast of the Antichrist, the dragon, and the false prophet. In traditional exegesis, which means interpretation of prophecy, using the beast as an example, the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8, the lion with eagle's wings, is the Babylonian Empire. In traditional interpretation, the lion with the wings of the eagles represents ancient Babylon, and in Daniel 8, the little horn represents Antiochus Epiphanes, who is one of the descendants of a guy named Seleucus, who was one of Alexander the Great's 4 generals and took over one of 4. When Alexander died, his empire was broken into 4 separate kingdoms, and Seleucus took Syria, was his home base, but he ruled all the way to India, and he ruled all the way up into Turkey, then down from Turkey to Syria, Lebanon, Israel, all the way down to the Egyptian border and into the Saudi Arabia in the desert. It wasn't Saudi Arabia then, it was Arabia. But point is, he had a vast territory that he ruled. He had the largest kingdom of all the 4 empires that were broken up. Now, one interesting fact about the descendants of the generals of Alexander the Great, they never fought each other. They never conquered one another. They lived for, until those empires disintegrated throughout history and time. They never fought one another and took, like, one of them didn't take over the other 3. But we're going to see something different with the Antichrist when we talk about the Antichrist here. So let's see. We're going to look at the beast, the Antichrist, and the dragon and the false prophet. So in traditional exegesis, as I said, using the beast as an example and the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8, the lion with the eagle's wings, again, is the Babylonian Empire of Nebuchadnezzar, an empire that ended over 2,500 years ago. The grizzly bear is thought to represent, again, this is in traditional interpretation, the grizzly bear is thought to represent ancient Persia, whose 4 wings and 4 heads are often interpreted to represent Alexander the Great's fast conquests, therefore the wings. And then the division, the heads, the 4 heads represent the 4 different countries that kingdoms that were Alexander's empire was broken up into. Okay? So the terrifying beast with iron teeth and 10 horns that was considered to be the Roman Empire in traditional theology, in traditional exegesis, it was thought to be the Roman Empire. Now, so most people who interpret these things using traditional, trying to interpret modern prophecy and modern events that are happening using ancient methods, it doesn't matter. You can't. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense if you call Persia the brown bear. It doesn't fit with the beasts that we see. I told you about the statue with the feet of the bear, with the body of the leopard, with the face of the lion, and with the wings of the eagle, and the dragon, which I believe represents China. You know, in my modern interpretation of that, the brown bear is Russia. The feet are Russia. What is Iran's animal representation today? The Persian leopard, not the brown bear. Okay, so Iran today, their modern beast is the Persian leopard. So the body of the beast that was at the United Nations, to me, represents Iran. The face of the beast is the lion, which no longer represents Babylon because Babylon doesn't exist. But what country symbol represents the lion? Well, there's several, but the one that really strikes me as prophetic and anti-Israel is England, is the United Kingdom. And I've been waiting to see what the United Kingdom would do, how they would enter the picture of the beast starting to move in the earth. And this is what I'm saying to you, is that I believe in the fall of 2021, when that statue of the beast came off the pages of the Bible and was placed at the United Nations, Brother Mike, what I'm saying is that's when the beast came off the pages of the Bible and started actually moving in the earth. So that statue was just a kind of a moment, a monument, if you will, marking the time when the beast started moving in the earth, okay? When we could actually look at these different creatures and say, this is what Russia's doing. This is what Iran is doing. This is what the dragon, what China is doing. And if you follow the modern interpretation, it makes a lot more sense. Now, am I saying that traditional interpretation is wrong? No. What I mean, I accept it, but here's what I mean by it. I think that the prophets, they didn't know about the United States. So when they saw the eagle's wings attached to the lion in representing Babylon 2,500 years ago, when Daniel saw was in his vision, he saw the wings of the eagle, he was thinking Babylon, because there was no United States. But I'm here to tell you that the wings of the eagle in Daniel chapter 7 represent the United States, okay? Now, you've been told, and most people believe, the United States is nowhere to be found in prophecy. But our beast is the bald eagle, and the wings of the bald eagle are on that beast in Daniel 7. Now, we're going to come to Revelation 13, and we're going to see the eagle's wings are gone in Daniel 13. There's no wings, no eagle's wings on that beast. And I'm going to tell you why. All right, let's go on. So I do accept traditional teaching, because the prophets who wrote those words, they were only using their understanding of nations and represent, for example, in Revelation 12, when John sees the two wings of the great eagle, he's seeing jet planes. Now, there were no jet planes when John wrote his book, the book of Revelation. There were no jets. He didn't understand what a jet plane was. But he saw this great eagle. He called it an eagle. Why did he choose eagle? Why didn't he choose a vulture or a hawk or a falcon, Brother Mike? There are many other large birds like the eagle. And the eagle is believe it or not, the eagle is a scavenger bird, just like the vulture, just like the falcon, just like the hawk. It's just more beautiful, but it's a scavenger bird. Sorry to tell you that, because that's the symbol of the United States. We don't want to think we're a bunch of scavengers, do we? But that's neither here nor there. So let's move on. Okay, praise the Lord. So traditional interpretation uses quotes from Revelation, the end of the world, to explain ancient things. For example, they say that the 10 horns of the beast, and this is using traditional interpretation, they say that the 10 horns of the beast are kings, Revelation, and that's true. That comes from Revelation 17:12. But there's a problem. These are the people who use traditional interpretation. Where are they getting the idea that the 10 horns represent kings? The only place you can find that is in Revelation 17:12. That's way at the end, in the apocalypse, at the very end of the age. So how can people who believe that the beast of Daniel 7 and the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8 are talking about things that happened in the time of Alexander, but yet when it talks about the 10 horns of the beast, they go and they say it represents 10 kings. Where are they getting that idea that it represents 10 kings? They're getting it from Revelation chapter 17, verse 12. It doesn't make sense, because they're actually using modern interpretation to fit their agenda. Okay? So, all right, let's move on here. So that's not exactly traditional, is it, Brother Mike? To use the kings of Revelation 17 to make your traditional interpretation work. It doesn't really fit. It's kind of cheating. Just a little bit. Okay? So it's not exactly traditional to use that. And since it hasn't happened yet, the beast with the 10 horns representing the 10 kings hasn't, theoretically, according to traditional interpretation, we haven't seen that beast yet. There is no beast, for example, in the world today where the body of the beast is the body of a brown bear. I don't know where the leopard fits in, since they say the leopard represents, I think, I've got it somewhere. Leopard represents, I think it's Russia or something. They've got it all mixed up. But when you use modern interpretation, it makes perfect sense. So let's go on, and I want to get past this. So another traditional interpretation that makes no sense is when traditionalists teach that the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8 is Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, and who is Antiochus Epiphanes? Again, he was the descendant of Seleucus, who was one of the 4 generals who took over one of the empires of Alexander the Great. Okay, that's who Antiochus Epiphanes is or was, and there's some problems with this prophecy and traditional interpretation. First of all, in traditional interpretation, I'm running out of time. In traditional interpretation, they say that the little horn of Daniel 8 and the little horn of Daniel 7 are two different beings, two different creatures, two different horns, represent two different kings. That makes no sense. And so I'm going to make sense of it, and I'm going to make sense of it in the next show, in my next episode, which is going to follow this one. So hang with me. I'm going to leave you hanging with a cliffhanger, okay? But another traditional interpretation that makes no sense is when they teach that the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8 are different people or different kings. I believe that in traditional interpretation, it's Antiochus Epiphanes, and he was the man from the Hanukkah story. He was the villain of the Hanukkah story. And so when we get to Hanukkah, I will be teaching about Antiochus, but he ruled Jerusalem for 3 years. Now that's important because the Antichrist, and I believe the little horn of Daniel 8 and Daniel 7 is speaking of the Antichrist. And in this next show, I'm going to show you why he's the Antichrist, okay? But they teach that he's Antiochus Epiphanes, which most people don't even know who that is. But we'll get on. We'll move on with that. The man I spoke of who ruled the largest portion of Alexander's once great empire and who attacked Israel and banned Judaism, that was Antiochus Epiphanes. The problem with saying that the little horn of Daniel is Antiochus is that he persecutes the prince of the host. That's Jesus. Antiochus lived 165 years before Jesus. How could he, if he's Antiochus, who lived 165 years, Mike, how could he persecute Jesus? He doesn't even know who Jesus is. So, trying to fit a traditional interpretation of prophecy into modern understanding and end-time understanding makes no sense. All right, friends, I'm going to give you the answer of all these things in the next episode. But I want to let you know we have calendars from Israel, and for your love gift of $30, we'll send you a beautiful art calendar from Israel with talks about the feasts. It's got the biblical calendar. And so just go to our website. You can order as many as you want. God bless you. They're $20. Thank you for watching today.
You've been watching Bible Prophecy Now with Rabbi Joe Bell. Please join us next week at this same time and place for more regarding today's world events and prophecy. To contact Rabbi Bell, please go to www.forzionsake.org. Rabbi Bell's mailing address is For Zion's Sake Ministries, P.O. Box 1486, Bristol, Tennessee 37620. Until next week, Shalom.